Do we have too much government?
We need to put people ahead of corporate profits.
This system is so lopsided.
This threat is a real threat to democracy.
And I think that's really important. That's something we haven't been doing in this country for a long time.
Where do you start? What do you do? How do you do it?
Access to Democracy and other Eagan community television programming is supported by Thomson Reuters, makers of Westlaw Next and based in Eagan. Through Westlaw Next and other innovative online services, Thomson Reuters is the world's leading source of intelligent information for businesses and professionals. Online at thomsonreuters.com. And by U.S. Federal Credit Union, the member-owned financial institution offering service, value, and experience you can trust to the greater Twin Cities community.
Welcome back to Access to Democracy. Alan Miller back with you, and back with us, Chuck Samuelson, the Executive Director of the Minnesota American Civil Liberties Union, or American Civil Liberties Union of Minnesota.
That's right.
The people who protect all of our rights.
That's right. We
the
depend.
people who are apolitical and really will fight for anybody. And first thing we have to talk about is Syracuse getting put on suspension, and Jim Boeheim, and as two ex-Syracusans. What a blow.
Well, first of all, Alan, it's just basketball. This is not like,
See,
it's not the main function of the university.
Perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it's, and Boeheim's been coaching there. Boeheim came there my freshman year in 1971.
So it's time.
Well, I mean, he's still going to be there.
Yeah.
But, I mean, and they've never had any hint of any scandal or anything up until this last thing, which actually was something that happened in '07. So.
And that's why I thought the punishment was a little bit too harsh, but be that as it may.
Well, we could do a whole program on the NC2A.
I would enjoy that very much.
No, I wouldn't. It would be...
Bring in Joe Nacera from the Times.
I think it'd be better to get a sports writer in for that one, I think. They'd be able to tell stories. Anyway, we're here to talk about Minnesota.
And we're here to talk about the criminal justice system.
Yeah.
And let's talk about the need for reform of the criminal justice system, not only in Minnesota, but in the United States. In the United States, where we have over 2 million people in prison, probably more than the prison population of most countries worldwide. In the United States, where the disproportionate amount of blacks and whites in prison, and the arrests, and what we've seen recently. And I know you people are involved in that to some degree because of Black Lives Matter and the Mall of America.
Well, and Ferguson, and the whole study we did on the racial disparities in low-level arrests, the work that the ACLU is doing on the militarization of the police and on the over-incarceration in the United States. In the United States of America imprisons a greater percentage of its population than any country in the world, period. And we have a prison population, I can't remember whether we're number 1 or number 2 in the world in terms of the number of people that we have under government control, which includes those people who are on supervised release.
We have 2.2 million, I think it is,
in jail. Actually,
in the jails.
Right, and it's it is a huge expenditure. The Koch brothers are so opposed to this that they've put $50 million into the ACLU to try and get policies reversed that would reduce the number of people in jail. And it's not because the Koch brothers have anything else in common with the ACLU. And the reason that the conservatives are opposed to this mass incarceration is because of the cost.
And yet conservatives are the ones that went forward with private prisons in a lot of places.
Well, there was a
are
pipe,
certainly not cost effective.
well, there's a pipe dream that some people have, a lot of people have, that whatever the government does, private enterprise can do it cheaper. And, frankly, that is probably true in some cases, but in most cases it's not. Particularly in those cases that are particular government functions. Plowing the streets and the alleys and picking up garbage are not particular government functions. There's no constitutional issues involved in that. But policing, arresting people, trying people, the court system, the bail system, and the prison system, these are all uniquely government institutions that can only be done by government. And, frankly, if you got private prisons, they have to obey all the rules of the government prisons, and that includes all the civil liberties rules. And when they do that, they're 20% more expensive.
And private prisons want to turn a profit because that's why they go into private prisons.
That's the 20%.
So that's the
But
20%.
The overhead, and they pay their top executives more. They pay their line workers less, and their top executives more. That's the issue with private prisons. But they have all sorts of, down south they have private companies that manage the people on parole. And so, that's where you hear these stories about people who have a $150 fine, and all of a sudden they keep paying and paying and paying, and at the end of 10 years they paid $5,000 and they owe $2,500, and the base fine was $1,500 or $150. That, there have been television programs about that, and those are pretty true.
Outsourcing governmental functions.
Right. But here's the real issue. We have used police to solve problems that they're really not suited to handle. I mean, and I can't speak for the rest of the country, but in Minnesota, you are a peace officer. You're not a law enforcement officer, despite what cops say. The law is quite specific. You are a peace officer. Your license comes from the Peace Officers Standards and Training Board, Post Board. And if you fail the post exam, you cannot be a licensed peace officer in the state of Minnesota. And yet, if you look at peace officers versus law enforcement officials, the law enforcement official enforces the laws. But there are so many laws, and every legislature passes a new bunch of laws and criminalizes a new bunch of things because of, Jane's law or Joe's law or Susie's law. I mean, any bill, any law, or anything that's made illegal with some person's name on it ought to raise a red flag, because what that is a really bad, unique thing that happened, and then you get a law of general effect. So you need to start out with the idea that we are incarcerating people because of things like loitering. Can you define loitering?
As we had that case in St. Paul.
Right, exactly.
Very recently.
Right, and loitering and lurking and these other laws are unconstitutionally broad and vague. You can't define it. How can you criminalize it? But primarily, what they are is they want to give the police laws they can use to keep undesirables, whoever you mean by undesirables, again, fairly vague term, away from the good people.
In the eye of the beholder, who is an undesirable.
Exactly. So, the ACLU is concerned about that. At the same time, we have generally accepted criminal justice practice. It's the broken window syndrome. And fundamentally, the way it works, there's different wrinkles. But the way it works is you identify high crime areas, you flood them with officers. When the officers are there, they behave differently in that area than they do in all the other areas of the city. They arrest everybody for anything.
And we see that happening
North
all
Minneapolis.
over. We
And
see that happening
all over the country.
when a 10-year-old gets pepper sprayed in Minneapolis.
Yes. But my point is that that's not, that the pepper spray, that's a demonstration, that shouldn't have happened no matter to who. But I'm talking about why African Americans are incarcerated at greater rates than whites. It's because they live in neighborhoods that are more aggressively patrolled. And the reason for that is, and it makes sense, you bring your officers into areas that are high crime areas, but the problem is you then charge them with enforcing every single solitary law, which means they incarcerate not everybody, but they incarcerate large percentages of the population, which then means that there's a lot more crime, nah? So you put more officers in, but they behave differently, they are more aggressive, and so you get this vicious cycle, and that's how you end up getting people, for low-level crimes, how you get these huge racial disparities, because police behave differently in those areas than they do in all the other areas of the same city.
Well, the ACLU in Minnesota is involved at least with one case where Black Lives Matter was protesting at the Mall of America.
Right.
A question is raised is, where do you draw the line in free speech?
Correct.
And what were these people doing that was illegal? And where is that case at the present time?
They're in the very preliminary stages of the criminal case. There was there's been some issues raised by the defense attorneys about getting access to all the video that the Mall of America has, because the Mall of America videotapes everybody all the time. That is the antithesis of a civil liberties zone, and that's just the way they do business. So we'll have to see what the judge says about that, but that's they just had the arraignments, so it's very early in the criminal process.
And what were these people doing?
They were having a rally in the rotunda of the Mall of America. And the argument for the Mall of America is that they didn't want this rally in this rotunda. And since they were a private organization, despite the fact that a third of the money from the mall is taxpayer money, they claim, and the courts have agreed, that they're a private organization and the Constitution doesn't apply.
So that a private organization can say, we don't want to rally here, or we want to pick and choose which rallies we want to have.
Exactly. The arguments that I've heard is that it's just like your house. You can choose to invite whoever you want to invite in and exclude whomever you want to exclude because it's your house. That doesn't really apply, because does your house...
They encourage the public.
Well, of course.
They
hold themselves out in their advertising as the town square. Does your house have a post office in it? Mine doesn't. How about a police, a police office? Mine doesn't have a police station in there. Do you have a school in your house? Because I don't have a school in my house. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Also, the Civil Rights Acts apply because these are public accommodations. So, Macy's, even if they wanted to, couldn't exclude blacks from their stores or from any of the restaurants in the mall. And the mall itself can't directly exclude blacks because of the Civil Rights Act, or Native Americans, or women. I mean, there's all the protected class people. So, they want the best of both worlds. They want to take government money, but they want to be private and decide who they're going to have. And, it's not like they don't do stuff and have big things in their rotunda all the time.
They're constantly having presentations of one sort or another, commercial presentations.
Or they get nonprofit groups in to do for breast cancer and lots of other good things. And it seems like every disease has a thing in the mall. They have mall walks to raise money for X, Y, and Z. I mean, and this group was in there. It's going to be an interesting debate in the court.
Now, you've had some, let's call them monumental wins lately. I think we talked about the last time you were here, the Gaylord case. Right,
we won that. That was a racial profiling case against the city of Gaylord and their police department, and I'm blanking on the name of the county that Gaylord's in. I want to say Swift County. I apologize if it's not Swift County, but it's the county that the Minnesota county that Gaylord's in.
Now, people have to understand also that when there is a financial reward in a case like that, it's not as though that money goes into the coffers of the Civil Liberties Union.
Well, here's how it works. There's various different components of an award. In the case of the Gaylord case, in the case of Gaylord, the plaintiff, Jesus Mendoza, she got the vast majority of the money, 90%. We got reimbursed for our costs.
For your costs,
Right, which is, the filing fee, which is $500 or $600. I don't know how many depositions, I can't remember, but a deposition is almost $2,000. And then I think we got some money for attorney's fees because it's our attorney who did the case, an employee, and so that we got some money, but not very much.
Gaylord was Sibley County, by the way.
Sibley, sorry. I apologize to
Swift County. But other things that are troublesome to me is I would think that schools and colleges would be the bastions of individual rights. Just the opposite in many cases. Can schools search a child's locker? Do they have the right to go online or demand that a password be given so they can check your emails? Things like that.
Well, okay, on the locker thing, we've lost that one decades ago. The lockers are the property of the school, so anything you put in there is property of the school and that can be searched anytime by a school official. Now, if the police want to search it, they have to get a warrant. But of course, then the school person can open the door, show the police person what's in there. The police person can get a warrant and then have an official search, and that's all kosher. So, students should have absolutely no expectation of privacy in their school lockers.
But what about getting punished for saying something about a teacher online?
That depends on where it's initiated from. If your criticism of the teacher or the school employee originates on school equipment with school software, and it disrupts the educational process, well, then you're in trouble. Because...
But you do it from your home at night.
Yeah, then they can't punish you for it. And we've sued...
They try.
Well, of course they could try. I mean, it's sort of like that's what people do. That's why the Civil Liberties Union is necessary. It's because, yeah, they try all the time. I've been working here for almost to be 19 years. And I have to tell you, we've done a case in Roseville, we've done a case in Olivia, we've done a case in Glenwood, and I think we've done a case up north, I can't remember where. So every couple years we do a similar case. They publish a newsletter, or they do something on Facebook, or fundamentally the school can't discipline you for things off school, and they can't discipline you if what you're doing was not primarily intended to disrupt the school. So, for example, you can say that such and such doesn't like me, okay? They have no right to go through and force you to give up your passwords and do all that stuff. Do they do it? Yes. If they do it, if they're doing it to you, call the ACLU and we'll take the case, if that's the facts. People need to understand that just because they say they can do it doesn't mean they can do it.
Another situation, and I think this is in the legislature right now, or maybe it's been beaten down already. Man is home asleep, gets a call from the police.
Right.
Your wife has been picked up for drunk driving. She was driving a car registered to you. We are taking that car under the civil forfeiture laws.
Correct.
As an innocent owner, not at the scene,
right,
and yet the law allows civil forfeiture of his property.
Right.
Something very wrong with that.
Oh, I couldn't agree more, but we need to change the law. So there's a bill in the legislature right now to do just that. That if let's say you and I are married, and let's say we have joint title to a car, and let's say that I'm drinking and driving and they confiscate the car, they have to compensate you 50% of the value of the car, or allow you to buy the car for my. In other words, they can take from me, but they can't take from you. That's basically our bill. That's not going anywhere. The police, the county attorneys, they don't want to give up the money. The civil asset forfeiture is a lot of money, $7 million a year for law enforcement and for the prosecutors. They don't want to give that up, and so they've managed to stop that this year.
So, as an innocent individual, you can lose your property.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
And where is that bill at the moment?
Dead.
That's not going to make it out of committee?
No, didn't get a hearing in the House. It's dead, you know. I mean, we've modified civil asset forfeiture once. That took 5 years. We had 2 civil asset forfeiture bills this year. One was the innocent owner, which you talked about, and the other one was quite innocuous. It instructed the police to simply list the things that they spent the civil asset forfeiture money on. That's dead too.
That's dead too. What about the rights of a transgender student to share a locker room? That one, frankly, I've been very pleased with the Minnesota sort of sports community. I forget the name of the non-governmental group that controls extracurricular activities in Minnesota. They simply said that they had the right to the bathroom of their choice, to the restroom of their choice, to the locker room of their choice. But there's been a lot of hullabaloo about that.
Not a lot.
By parents.
Some, a few parents who complain very loudly. I mean, for really no good reason.
What about the school district saying you may not wear this type of clothing at the prom? Where do you draw the line on that?
You know, we say, you know, I mean, obviously if there's probably a line you can draw. I can't think of one offhand. Fundamentally, it's a prom. They can wear the dress, the pants that they want to wear. I mean, and if men want to wear dresses and women want to wear pants, that's fine as far as.
It would be an interesting prom.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying, you know, I mean, and you know, shockingly enough, teenagers who might do this just to get a rise out of the school administration, and the smart move for the school administration is to say nothing.
But they rarely do.
You know.
One thing that bothers me about school districts in Minnesota is that they shop around for good athletes and bring them into their district. I know in New York you couldn't do that. You lived in this area, you were geographically within that area, you went to schools, the public schools in that area, and you stayed in that area.
I don't know how much of that really happens. I hear stories about it all the time.
Well, you see certain schools that are always with terrific athletic teams, and some of those athletes are not from within the geographical boundaries of that school district.
Like, I can't, you know, for example, my son wrestled, and in the wrestling community there was this grumbling undercurrent about Apple Valley and having all these people who didn't live there. But, you know, when you looked at it, yeah, there were a lot of people who moved up from Iowa and moved into Apple Valley and got jobs in the Twin Cities, and their kids went to school in Apple Valley. But, you know, I mean, you can't punish, the whole family moved up, you can't punish people for that. And you shouldn't punish people for that. And did they wrestle for, yes, they wrestled for Apple Valley. And were they really good wrestlers? Yeah, but it's not like anybody proved that Apple Valley hired these families. And in New York, Alan, when I played sports in Western New York, there were cities that were somehow always managed to get elite soccer players from Italy or from Brazil or from some of these other places where soccer is a big deal.
But they live within the district. They
of
bring
course,
them into the district.
Of course they did. Where did they manipulate the rules and find jobs for the parent? Of course they did. But, you know, what are you going to do? The bigger problem is you've got some schools that are so huge that one of their that one of their classes is the size of entire schools, and while there's nothing illegal about that, what there is from my point of view, I wouldn't live in those towns and send my kid to those super mega schools, and the reason's really simple. There's only 22 guys on a football team, 11 on offense, 11 on defense, and you can have a few others and substitutes, but you're still not going to get the kind of numbers that they have in some of the bigger schools like Eden Prairie and Wayzata and stuff. How many people can play hockey at a time? How many people can be in the band or the orchestra or the theater programs? I mean, at a certain point, if your school is so big,
It's just population that we're talking about.
right? Exactly. And is that legal? Sure. But I wouldn't like it. But for my kids. But that's a different story. And my kids went to big schools.
We got 2.5 minutes left.
Sure.
How far does privacy go with regard to police body cameras?
The body camera solution, the privacy part of the body camera thing is a chimera. The only reason that the ACLU supports body cameras at all is to restore credibility with the police, and that's absolutely crucial. Right now, in the metropolitan area, police credibility is at a low point. Body cameras, though, to restore credibility, have to always be on.
That's fine, but then how long can they keep the tape?
They are going to have to keep the tape for a relatively long period of time, less than 30 days, but a relatively long period of time, in order to make sure that whatever complaints there are can be resolved. And you have to have some time frame for these complaints to be made. So the answer is I don't know, but they aren't going to get deleted that day.
No, I wouldn't expect them to be deleted that day.
Well,
but
for the automated license plate readers, for example, the bill that we had said you would delete them and you would not retain them at all unless there was a crime. So if there was a car theft, then you'd keep the data to find out if you could see the car theft on the camera.
And what happened to that?
Died. The police didn't want it. They want to keep it. The FBI loves that data. They can track people with it.
Well, with all the cameras in our society now, we have no more privacy. Privacy, I think, is a thing of the past.
Well, to quote the great philosopher, we have met the enemy and it are us. We've been cowed into believing that the only way to be safe is to give up your privacy, which is caca, but that's what we've been told, and we're buying it. So until we stop buying it, it's not the FBI doing it to us, it's us doing it to us. And we need to decide that that's not something we want to
The
have
fear
done.
factor
Sure.
moves society.
Well, if you scare people, you get them to do stuff. Fear is a wonderful motivator.
And there's so many areas of civil liberties to talk about. It's always a pleasure to have you in here. We're talking with Chuck Samuelson of the ACLU, and it's also good to know that they're out there and protecting our rights. Your rights, my rights, anybody's rights when it comes to protecting your civil rights and your civil liberties.
Well, thank you, Alan. And
Thank you.
it's fun to be here.